Anita here and welcome to another video. Another sketchbook diaries, guys. You're probably going to see a lot more of them in the coming months. But today I'm actually playing with the Ikea MÅLA watercolor set that I've picked up recently because I've been seeing the reviews of the Ikea art supplies popping up in the YouTube community lately, and I was so curious because I'm a huge Ikea fan, guys. Like, I've been forever. And so when we went to Ikea recently, I actually went to the children's section and picked up this watercolor set. I left the other supplies alone because really the watercolor set was the only thing that interested me. This is not a review. I want to really stress that because I think reviewing this from an artist's perspective is just unfair. This is meant to be a children's set. I mean, it's at the first glance, you can see that this is a children's set. I didn't even have to, you know, dip my paintbrush in that paint. The paints are very chalky, they're streaky, but the colors are beautifully vibrant, and for children they're a perfect starting set. The colors don't mix very well, at least not that much. I tried a few mixes and they become very muddy very quickly. But the paints reactivate really quickly as well, and the whole design of this set, I was really impressed actually, because the tin, it's not really a tin, but the little plastic base for the paint is extremely sturdy. I swear you could throw that thing and nothing would happen to it. The same with the base. As you can see, it comes with this like a little box with some accessories. It looks like a proper, you know, painting box. Everything is very sturdy, and it's really just, you know, that IKEA plastic. If there is such a thing. It just really reminds me of the storage boxes. And it comes with two little cups, like little water holders, and two brushes. And one thing that really surprised me were these brushes. I mean, seriously, half of my mind expected, you know, just regular, like those plastic cheap brushes that come in those cheap watercolor sets. But these are proper brushes. I mean, I use brushes like that, just, you know, round brushes with a tip, you know, with a nice sharp tip. And so I was really curious how I could just, if I could make something with those paints. So I didn't have really a plan. I was thinking about it for a while, if I wanted to just make a little, you know, line drawing beforehand and just paint color that like I would normally do, or if I wanted to do what I'm doing recently, is just have fun. So I've decided I just want to scribble, okay, and see where that takes me. So I'm really obsessed with flowers lately, especially chamomile. My chamomile in my garden has been growing like crazy, and I've been harvesting it, so that's kind of the thing that's on my mind. But I've also seen some flowers on Pinterest, especially that what I'm using for the channel on Instagram. If you're interested, you know, all the links are in the description. And so I've started with just some flowers and just freeform flowers. And then I'm just adding some petals. And, you know, whenever I'm doing something like this, when I'm just trying not to worry about, you know, about the outcome. And it's really hard for me because I know that I'm recording at the same time, which means that somebody will see whatever I'm working on, whether the result is good or bad, somebody will see it. So that's kind of stressful. But I'm trying to let go of that a little bit, and I just try to go with my gut and adjust as I you know, fill in the areas and try to learn something new about myself and about my process. So as you can see here, I'm working mostly with this kind of like a yellow ochre color and with just generic yellow, and I'm mixing those two colors together. Now the colors on this palette don't mix that well, but if they're this similar, then there is not really much difference. The colors are very, you know, they are very saturated. They remind me of kind of like a washed down gouache. It's just cheap watercolor paint, guys. But the problem with it is that I can't really glaze. It picks up from the paper immediately, okay? Just goes off immediately. It's really more like a very thin gouache rather than watercolor. So it was a little bit, you know, I needed strategy for what I wanted to do. So I'm drawing, as you can see, there's some bees starting, and I'm really not planning. It's just like a sketchbook. It's practice, okay? It's practice. Mostly here I wanted to practice a little bit with freehand strokes and just flower shapes. And after painting this, I went on to painting something else. So it also worked as kind of a warming up exercise. Very useful. I mean, this painting didn't take that long. Setting up the camera and just making sure everything was recorded was making it take long, but it was a very, very satisfying painting to do. It made me worried a little bit at this point because I really didn't know what I was going with it. I just was like, okay, I'm just gonna keep adding and see where it takes me. At some point I started adding brown. I'm not really keen on black lately, so I've kind of replaced black with brown. And anywhere where I would normally go with just black, like with the bees, I'm just adding brown instead. The same thing happens with, I'm not using black fine liners, I'm just using a brown fine liner for the past, I don't know, a couple of months. So here I've actually mixed a little bit of that yellow ochre color with a little bit of the cooler blue, just to create something like a shading color. I wanted to add a little bit of definition under the petals just to make them pop a bit more because they are white, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to glaze much. And I didn't want to use any colored pencils, or at least not much. I'm adding it at some point because I realized that I wouldn't be able to add any fine liner at all. What happened actually is the fine liner starting to scrape off the paint and getting clogged, which was really interesting. So definitely not for mixed media. I mean, this paint is definitely not for mixed media. So I realized that, you know what, I need some kind of definition here. So I'm adding this very, very washed down. I'm adding a lot of water. This paint is really, and I mean really, really, really saturated. So I'm adding a lot of water to this color and just making it kind of a shadow. As you can see, the petals are popping up a little bit better. This painting is in general very, very light. I don't know if you guys remember, but I've mentioned a couple of videos ago that I'm really using a lot of saturated colors lately, and I just keep adding the color because it's so beautiful. And I sometimes want to make something pastel or like lighter, but it just doesn't work out because I just keep adding the color. And someone mentioned that it might be because I don't do, you know, enough color studies beforehand, so I just keep adding color because I didn't plan enough beforehand, which also might be true. But I think actually, and this little sketchbook thing made me realize that it's probably because I'm using high quality paint right now. And that high quality paint allows me to add a lot of vibrant color without it looking very chalky or having that weird texture. This paint, once I started adding more, like the darker the color, the more texture it had. And if you guys remember, I really don't particularly like texture. I like my colors to be flat. So it made sense. It was just like this like a kind of, you know, epiphany at this when I was painting this, that, oh, it's probably because I'm using higher quality paint, and so that paint allows me to actually go for these very saturated colors, which is interesting. Because yesterday, the Instagram challenge I'm doing right now is a day, every single day I'm using a different color to make a little something, just, you know, exploring color. And it's a very nice challenge. Like nothing complicated. I'm pretty much making it complicated myself as much as I want to. And yesterday's color was apricot. And I really wanted to use a very pastel apricot in this one just because the previous three were so saturated. But honestly, I went with it. I made it a little bit more pastel, but I didn't feel good about it. I wanted to make it all juicy and full of color and life, and I guess at this point just that's what makes me happy, that color. yeah, it's just something that I've been thinking about recently, and I think that's the solution. And just my paint allows me to go into more saturated colors. So that's a very interesting thing. Here you can see me rummaging through my colored pencils. That's when I realized that I am not going to be able to add any definition to those flowers. I wanted to add a little bit of outline, like in the shadow areas, just to give it a little bit more depth. So that's when I went for a colored pencil, just because I just needed it, and I didn't want to ruin my fine liners. They are fine, by the way. They did a little bit of convincing. I needed to convince them a little bit, scrape on the side of the paper, like you'll see me doing here in the corner. So I did that on a separate piece of paper, and they are working just fine. I think they just got clogged. So yeah, I'm actually really liking this little color study, and I think I'm going to use, I'm going to be going through greens somewhere in the middle of the month. So I think I'm actually going to use this kind of cooler greens in the background. Because I really like that grass on that, this shade of green that I used for the shadow in the background. I really like a yellow ochre and some kind of cooler blue. I'm guessing I'm just gonna add phthalo blue probably. It's not really exactly the same color, but works for me. So another thing I'm using here is just adding a little bit of white to the centers of the flowers. Once again, they were supposed to be black. I wanted to add a bit of a fine liner detail, but yeah, that's not gonna work. So I'm using acrylic ink. I bought it for the Inktober last year, and I've never really used it, so I'm giving it a chance. And yeah, that's my little sketchbook page for today, a little warm-up before painting. I'm so happy with it, guys. I'm actually really pleased with how it came out, even though it was so fast and painted with Ikea watercolors. And yeah, I'm a little bit obsessed with bees, so And here you can see me actually cleaning it up. It was so easy to clean up. I wanted to just check if the paint would come off easily without staining the plastic, because I ended up using everything as a palette, and it came out, you know, just fine. So I'm really happy with it. And yes, definitely recommended if you want to buy it, you know, a first watercolor set for your children. Don't buy it for yourself. I think it's a little bit too basic. But yeah, that's it for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm really highly recommending that you follow me on Instagram, because I will be painting a lot more over there this month. However, I think I'm going to make at the end of the month kind of like I'm going to show you what I've been working on and kind of discuss it like I did with Inktober. We will see how far I get, okay? It's still only day 5. Okay, so yes, thank you so very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!